Okay, so welcome back. This is part two. I think I made a mistake in the first one. I told you this was chords. We need scales to make the chords, so we're going to have to. So we're going to go over scales first. So today we're going to go over how scales are made, right? So there are a few different formula ways you can do the formulas. So this, just to go over this real quick, this is again the way the notes are, the sequence of the notes. It's not the actual notes on the guitar because they will be different on every string, but it's just to show you where wholes and half steps are. Let's move on to the next drawing. This is the major scale. This is the A major scale. There's a wonderful, very simple, surprisingly simple way of making the scales that you don't really have to know much theory to do this. You just need to know the sequence of the notes. But they use these little. There's a formula for every scale, right? The formula for the major scale is in whole and half steps, right? Everyone is in whole and half steps. So every scale, there are so many different scales. There's a natural minor scale, there's the harmonic minor scale, melodic minor scale, there's the Locrian scale, Dorian, Aeolian, all these different scales that you can play around with and use and experiment with as you go on your learning journey, right? This is so awesome. There's so much to play with and so much to help you be creative. Now, they all have a different formula. And the formula they use is root, which is the root note that you are playing in, whether that could be any note at all, but we're using the example of A, okay, just to stay consistent. Now, root is the A, okay, that's the first one, number one, right here. Then there's a formula in whole and half steps. So the formula for the major scale is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Easy to remember. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. If you know that, you can make the scale, and you know the sequence of the notes, you can make the major scale. You can know the major scale even if you don't know the notes in the major scale, for any key, for any notes, okay? That's what's so wonderful about this. You don't need to memorize anything actually if you know this. You can figure it out on the spot, if you're going that way, okay? So I find patterns useful to memorize, but you could. And you could always figure it out for any key if you're playing on a different instrument like a piano or something like that, where piano doesn't have the same pattern for every key. You have to figure it's different for every key. Okay. But guitar, we're lucky we have it the same for every key. What we mean by whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, which we've gone over the whole and half steps, but it's a root, it's a whole step to the B, right? From the A. A whole step, see, A to B is a whole step. Two here, right? From B to C sharp is again a whole step. See, we skip C, it's a whole step. From C sharp to D is a half step. So we just go one fret, see? Whole, whole, half. And then from D to E is another whole step. Whole, whole. Again, from E to F sharp is another whole step. So E to F sharp, two frets, whole step. From F sharp to G, whole step. F sharp to G sharp, excuse me, whole step. And then back to the beginning to the root from G sharp to A is a half step, which is this A here. Okay? So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's how it works. Now, for your clarification, let me get all this stuff off of here. For your clarification, you can start from anywhere. So let's do it somewhere else just for fun, you know, if you find this fun. So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. We could start from anywhere on here. This is how the chords are made. Let's start from C. So C to D. So whole, C to D, whole, D to E, half, E to F, right? C is nice because it has a lot of whole notes in it. Not all those sharps and flats to mess with. Whole, whole, half, and then whole, 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 half. So whole, F to G, whole, G to A, which is this A here, and then whole, A to B, and then half, B to C. See, so C scale is actually everything we had in the beginning without the sharps and flats. C doesn't have any sharps and flats in the whole scale, right? Whole major scale. So this is the C scale. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, right? That's the C scale, C major scale. So this is how you would do it for any major scale. This is how you use the formula. And then every scale has its own formula, right? It'll have a different amount of wholes and halves. Okay, so I hope that was clear. If you have any questions about it, as always, feel free to comment, let me know, and I'll try to answer more specifically. We're not going to go over all of the scales and all of the whole and half step formulas, all of the note formulas, because it would just be a lot to go over here. And also, you don't need to know them all, especially at first. Do one at a time. Get familiar with one. It takes a while to really get fluent in one. And there's going to be scales that you use more than others because you enjoy it. You like the way it sounds. You like to play it. You like that sound. Like I like the minor pentatonic. I also like the natural minor scale, harmonic minor scale, melodic minor scale. These are all beautiful because I like to play that like rock, that cool stuff. Blues I like, so I love the blues scale, which is a 6-note scale. Okay, so it's going to depend on where you go. There's some scales that I never use, like I hardly ever play. So it's just like the major scale. I don't really use the full major scale when I'm soloing a lot of time. I use the Aeolian, which is the natural minor scale. I like that. So depends what you're playing. If I was playing something more like I believe country music uses the major scale a lot. Okay. Now I want to always try to make this relatable. So let's look at the minor pentatonic scale in relation to the major and look at another way that you can make the formulas. This is the major scale, the A major scale that we've gone over, how it's made with the whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. These are the notes in the A major scale. Now, another way that they make the formula for making chords out of this from the scales, the major scale is designated numbers. Okay, so one, the root is one, then whole, whole, half, two, three, four, whole, 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 half, five, six, seven, and one again is the A, the root note. Now, these are the numbers that they're used to designate for the major scale. So the major scale's formula technically is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, you can use the whole, whole, half. There's another whole, whole, half formula for every scale. And for example, the minor pentatonic scale, the formula is root, which is A. Then this formula for minor pentatonic is whole plus a half, which is really 3 half steps. Same thing. Whole step plus the half step is 3 half steps. Then a whole step, a whole step, a whole plus a half again. So a 3 half steps, and then a whole. So whole plus a half, whole, whole, whole plus a half, whole. That's the formula for the minor pentatonic scale. If you took the notes from using that formula, this would be what you would get, okay? A, C, D, E, G. That's the minor pentatonic scale. And all of those notes are in the C major scale, by the way, which we just went over earlier in the previous screen. So that's why you can play that. You can play that scale. You can use that scale over a major C progression. Okay. So in other words, the A minor pentatonic would sound good to play over a C major chord. Now we have from major scale. This is the other way you can make the formula. So you can use this whole, whole, half formula here, which is one way where you don't need to know any other scales to do that. Or you can use the number formula, which is here, see? So the number formula comes always off of the major scale, which we have here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the number formula is always taken out of the major scale. So this A is 1, the root is 1, A. Then flat 3, so you go to the 3 in the A major scale and you make it flat. So this is a C sharp, right? If we made the C sharp flat, which means what? Minus half a step, right? That's what flat means, minus 1/2 step. If we C sharp minus a half a step is a C. So that's what we get here, C. And then you take the 4th note of the major scale, the 5th note of the major scale, and then the flat seven. So you go to the seventh note of the major scale, and again, you flat means minus one half step. So flat seven. So a G sharp would become a G, and that's what we have here. And so these number formula here can be used on any scale in any key from any major scale. You can take the C scale and apply this formula to the C scale, the C major scale, and you'll have the C minor pentatonic scale. You can do it with these numbers here, or you can do it with this right here, excuse me, root, whole and a half, whole and a half, whole. So you can use that without knowing the notes in the major scale, or if you know the notes in the major scale, you can use this, okay? So you don't ever have to use this to figure out the notes, by the way, because the way I teach is, and the way I practice is the way as I use patterns. So once you know the patterns, you don't have to know all of the specific notes, but it can be helpful to know which notes you can play over which chords at certain times, or which notes are have a special sound in the chord. In other words, we won't go over that right now because that's also something that comes with feel, but it is helpful to know. Like the blues note, for example, in a blues scale, sounds gives it a different sound, much different than a minor pentatonic. Now, I hope that's clear. If it's not clear, again, let me know. You can use the number formula, or you can use the whole root formula. And if you use the number formula, it has to come from the major scale of that key. Okay, that's the only difference. The whole half, you don't need to have any knowledge or knowledge of the notes. Now let's move on to the next screen. Okay, and so this is the last thing I wanted to show you. I hope it doesn't scare you off. I know it looks like a lot, but it's actually really clear and makes a lot of sense. So it'll help you understand. This is minor pentatonic scale that we just saw how you take it from the major scale, right? This is how you make the minor pentatonic. These are the notes that we came up with. When you look down here, this is a very helpful way to look at the scale. Why? Because one, see, it has the notes here, one, flat three, four, five, flat seven. Now, every note has a unique sound to it in the scale. That's why certain phrases sound good in any key because like you can repeat them in the same pattern. So in other words, you can take the first pattern of the minor pentatonic and there might be some cool riff that you like to play in that, bending a note and coming down, hammering on, pulling off, whatever it is, and then you can play that in any key because it's not the same exact notes, but it's the same note in the scale. So it's still going to be the flat three of that scale. It's still going to be the four of that scale. It's still going to be the five of that scale, the flat seven, right? Now, if you look here, this is a wonderful way to look at this and really a great way to play around with it. Now, why is this useful? Is because like looking at it like this, especially is so beautiful, so wonderful. You can see the A is the root note, right? So that's going to be like the return note, the note that you're always coming back to, because that like brings it back into A. You feel like you finish the line, whatever you're playing when you come back to A. So if you know where all these A's are, see, and you get used to knowing where these are, and all the other notes have their own purpose, their own feeling that you get familiar with as you play, right? The cool thing about looking at it like this also is that you can do so many things. So like double stops, right? Like see, in other words, playing two strings at once on different strings, you see all these different possibilities now, right? For double stops, look, all these possibilities for double stops, like so cool. And you can learn that. You can see like a lot of patterns and come up with a lot of ideas this way by looking at it across the whole board, and also knowing which notes are where. This also helps you connect it with chords, which we'll talk about in the next one. In the next part 3 of this series, we'll talk about how chords are made. So I hope you found this useful and helpful to understand this. If you have any questions about this, let me know. You can also use this for arpeggios, right? I don't know if you know what that is. It's like when you play right down the chord. A chord you can do it with, but you can also do it with like a stream of notes. So like these three notes, you would kind of isolate each one at a time without picking each string individually. You go down like you're striking a chord, like doon doon doon, like that, right down, and you stop the one note after you hit it. Just let me know if you have any questions about this, and let's move on to part 3. So I'll see you there.